Make sense of the mystery with Tanishka the Moon Woman. Welcome to the March 2026 Ascension Update. Armageddon, our call to unify. Hi everybody, welcome to the March Ascension Update. So Armageddon simply means the war of opposites. So what has now kicked off with the attack on Iran is sounding this the epic conclusion to the spiritual war, which has been happening covertly for quite some time. The word Armageddon means the war of opposites. So our lesson at this time is to be the change and to heal inner conflict rather than get hooked into the drama if we're not directly involved, and allow ourselves to get spiraled down from the place of duality in the solar plexus, thinking everything's good and bad, black and white, and then going down into the drama of the emotional center and then into the base fears of not surviving. That doesn't help. Our challenge at this time is to ascend both the tree of knowledge and the tree of life. The tree of knowledge is transcending this idea of us and them, right and wrong, to view everything from a mythic or an archetypal perspective. You know, that's the big challenge with us moving into the Aquarian age. It's seeing the big picture. Aquarius being the third and final of the three air signs. It asks us to, not take things personally. Now, and the tree of life is about us, awakening our own power, our dragon power, the sacred fire within us. More about that later. Prophecy has said, both from Edgar Cayce, the sleeping prophet, that there would be a potential global conflict which starts in the Middle East. He said, however, that Russia could play a pivotal role in easing a global catastrophe. Nostradamus, another seer, predicted a 7-month great war, but also a great swarm of bees, which is symbolic of the sacred feminine. The matriarchal, pre-patriarchal cultures, they really worshipped bees, which were matriarchal. So a lot of people have took this to mean that Nostradamus was saying, at the end of the age, the feminine would rise. He did, however, say shadows will fall, but the man of light will rise. So the light will prevail, that Christ consciousness. But he said, the stars will guide those who look within. So this kind of heralds, this is the birth of mysticism. I remember in the early 90s seeing star and moon tea towels and that motif. And it was like, the Aquarian age is about a return to mysticism, to understanding that the only thing that has any power over us are the greater cycles that initiate us through our growth. Now, I sort of clocked that Armageddon was about to really kick off in the first 2 months of this year, because everywhere I went I was seeing that symbol of the horn that is the herald, that when it's blown, so in the Norse tradition, when that horn was blown by the one who guarded the lower realms, it would be a sign that Ragnarok was beginning, the great battle. But so too, I was at a friend's place, a couple of friends, and I kept seeing conch shells, and while I'd never been able to blow it successfully before, this time I picked it up and I blew it. Wow, it was kind of like, that's an interesting sign. But in the Polynesian tradition, the conch shell is used to call people to ceremony, to circle. And, I've been getting, now is the time for not just the women but the men. Everybody needs to be gathering in circle, remembering how we can raise our power. Stay tuned. I've got the Red Tent Facilitator training starting this Sunday for International Women's Day with a live workshop. If you're interested to know more, I'll put the link below. But yeah, I remember seeing in films constantly this blowing of the horn. And in Paleolithic times, the cow horn was sacred to the Magdalens, to the menstrual shamans, who would mark the cycles as notches on a cow horn. And so it's this acknowledgement that the end of one cycle is now happening so that a new cycle can begin. And we need this cycle to end. It's not working for anybody. So the next 6 weeks are going to be pivotal. You know, I've been saying that since last year. So we've got the new moon coming up in Pisces, the sign of endings, on March the 19th. But the following new moon is when we'll have 7 planetary bodies in Aries, considered the sign of war. So everything's coming up, you know, to this crossroads of death and rebirth. And it's interesting that 4 different reasons have been given now for the decision to attack Iran, which even commentators are saying kind of heralds the fact that we're not being told the real reason. But it's interesting to note that only 27% of Americans are actually in favour of this. So, you know, it's not the people that are fighting each other, it's those at the top of the pyramid of power. But everything is divine will. We must always remember that what is unfolding, yes, it's happening through the players on the world stage, but it's bigger than them, it's bigger than us. So what is the significance of Iran? Well, there's no doubt it is the most oppressive place for women on the planet since 1979, when the Ayatollah Khomeini introduced Sharia law, which pretty much overnight stripped women of their human rights under the threat of public whippings, stonings to death, and imprisonment for menial things, such as showing a bit of hair out of their burqa. But it's also a place rich in oil, which is the blood of the Earth Mother. So all of this attention on Iran is part of this ascension process, because this is the site of Stargate 10. Stargate 10 is one of the 12 major vortices of ley lines on the planet. So this is where we have interdimensional communication and travel. When the stargates are open, we can more easily embody our divinity. We have direct knowing. We are able to access our intuitive knowing directly from the quantum field and from the grid of the earth. But when that grid is harnessed, which it was when the ancient temples were destroyed and the patriarchal religions put their temples on those stargates, knowing that those who own those pivotal points own the game board, that's when the consciousness descended and people became fearful and, handed their power over to military regimes. Now, stargates are formed through the coming together of opposites, so you can see why this is pivotal. So, and the role that we can all play in not just ending this war, but ending this paradigm of war, this mindset of war. So we each have a pivotal part to play in this time of ascension. But here's the thing. Ascension, it's kind of counterintuitive, is about embodying the divine. So Sephiroth number 10 in the Tree of Life is Melkut. So this is what this Stargate relates to. It is where the divine energy comes through from the solar logos, from the sacred masculine, and enters into the Earth Mother's body. So too, Malkut, the lowest final Sephiroth, which the path to it from Yesod, the moon, or the 9th Sephiroth or energy center, to the 10th is the tarot card of the world, the final lesson in the Fool's journey through the 22 major arcana cards. And this is when we embody a balance of all 4 elements. So it's never been more important for us to each individually find our balance. And we can do that by honouring the 4 elements. For instance, the last new moon, I got taken down with a virus because I hadn't been honouring my earth element. And the new moon was in Virgo, an earth sign. So for those of us who had been pushing, overworking, because Virgo is both work and health, our health went, no, you're going to stop and you're going to rest your body. So this next new moon we're coming up to on the 19th of March in Pisces, the lesson is to feel. Allow yourself to stay in your body and feel the intensity of grief at what's happening in the world and perhaps what's happening in your life with major endings, because grief is the only way to accept what is happening, and the endings there are inevitable if we are to have a new beginning. So the more we can create union within our own arc of the covenant, each and every one of us is that arc, the 2 arcs either side, hang on, let me just put my hands down, there we go, that create that yonic lozenge shape that is our auric field when we activate the 7 bodies of our energy field. When we open that, we go through the portal, if you will, into the age of light. So this activation of the rainbow body, we can see it happening right now. The aurora borealis and australis is happening further and further away from the poles. We have started the cusp period of the pole shift. And so this is a wonderful sign. It's like, oh, there's enough of us, we're getting to that tipping point, that have activated our rainbow bodies, because we are climbing that inner tree of life to activate the rainbow bridge, the chakra system, which is opening the 7 stargates within us. And the way we do that is by unveiling the 7 faces of the 7 gods and goddesses and creating a harmonic union between all of those at the 7 gates. If you're interested to know more about that, you can check out my Rainbow Warrior program or my Inner Goddess program. So this is the preparation for the beloveds to come together in sacred coupling. And this is how stargates are opened. There are lotuses of light that are encoded with sequences, so codexes, that are encoded in our DNA. So, we need to be responding to what's happening as alchemists, not activists, that protesting, all it does is exacerbate polarities and conflict. It doesn't serve us. So don't pick a side. Instead, take up the fight within. But it's very exciting because Stargate 10 was ancient Sumeria. It was the Garden of Eden. So this was the birthplace of sacred feminine mysteries and of the Ascension process, but it was also the birthplace of the patriarchal religions. This started with Zoroaster, who basically appropriated the symbol of the goddess Isis with the wings, and he, at this place, said that, the fire that they were going to worship was that of the Father God. And previously it was, a place where it's a thermal spring, so that was created with the volcanic fire of the Earth Mother. So it was a place where the goddess was worshipped, known as Sheba or Sheba, the dark goddess. In fact, its earlier name, the Throne of Solomon, was where he encountered the dark goddess Sheba, and I dare say had an ego death, because it's also called the prison of Solomon, and it's said to be where his demons were. So it's where he met his shadow side. So unlike the Sky Father, who was an immortal and refused to die, refused to have the ego death, like the men who go through the Holy Grail rite of passage, they're meeting with the dark goddess to behead their ego. The gods that followed didn't. So Zoroaster it was his three Magis, his three priests, that followed the star to Bethlehem to see the avatar Yeshua born, who was a prophet of Islam, the saviour of Christianity, and the prophesied king of the Jews. So all of those three religions are all tied up in Zoroastrianism, which is the worship of the Father God, the Solar Logos, the rational mind, as the one and only God. And this is why these three patriarchal religions are based on belief, on rules and regulations, on compliance and punishment, on what you think is right and wrong. So it's actually stuck in the solar plexus. It can't be in the heart. So, if we are to raise the collective energy from duality, fighting, polarizing, into the heart, we need the feminine to rise. And the women of Iran have been letting their voices out, and this is rattling the Stargate, so to speak, yeah? Because when a woman releases her voice, the utterance and uterus come from the same Latin root. So too the throat. The throat is a power center, the second power center, but the first is the base chakra, and it's connected to the cervix. So when a woman frees her voice, her cervix can open, the birthing energies can open, and the women are the ones birthing this new age. So, because unless the feminine rises, we're not going to have a balance, and we can't go through the fourth dimensional portal into the fifth dimensional new earth if we're not in balance. So, the Zoroastrians, they kept this sacred fire burning in a chalice for, the locals say 2,000 years. If you look it up online, it says 700 years because the Byzantine Empire extinguished the flame and then they kind of lit it again. But this signals dark occult magic, because that's what the Roman Empire did. They had priestesses, Vestal virgins, who had to constantly tend the flame to fuel the ambitions of the Roman Empire. And if a priestess dared allow the fire to go out, she was brutally murdered. So, this appropriation of the sacred fire of the feminine is what is needing to shift at Stargate 10. And we can all be part of that, because Malkut, the 10th Sephiroth, it's asking us to embody the divine. So rather than just talk about the divine and see the divine as something outside of ourselves which keeps us in separation, we're being asked to be the change, be the transformation, and embody the I am presence. I am the divine, but I'm also the shadow. It's Zen. It's acknowledging that we're everything. It's interesting that it's brown. The colour of the Sephiroth Malkut is brown. And have a look at the fashions of this season. Everything is in earthy tones. There's a lot of brown. I know I've only been wanting to wear brown and buying brown clothes for the last few years. So I thought it was because everything was turning to shit. But no, it is Malkut that we're being asked to embody. I remember my Kabbalah teacher, the week that we journeyed the first Sephiroth of Malkut, said, clean the toilet, because you've got to be grounded to embody the divine. So, cleaning is a great way to ground your energy. So, Stargate 10 is where the relationship between the masculine and the feminine is most distorted, because, this was the place the light came through and entered into Eden. The Anunnaki, the ancient star beings who first seeded the mysteries there, that are the heart of the mystic tradition of the sacred feminine. They understood that we needed to be doing ceremonies at these stargates to keep the collective consciousness high. And we do that by raising our inner fire. You know, the basis of the word magic relates to a fire that never goes out, the eternal flame within all of us. Excuse me. So, you know, this is for us to be very mindful of how we're using our energy. And, you know, at the moment we need to be using our energy to create balance rather than putting fire on the inflamed situation with our unconscious thoughts and words of blaming and shaming the behaviour of others, whether that's Trump, whether that's, you know, Zionists. We need to just bring it back to us, that we are the change we want to see in the world. But there's also reason for celebration in this. We are watching the end game of patriarchy. You know, the old story that started not just 2,000 years ago with the age of Pisces, where we had, you know, the birth of the three patriarchal religions. 1,000 years before that, we had the Greco-Roman culture, where the earth was divided up into three, land, sea, and the underworld, amongst the three Olympiad gods, Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades. And this anchored a story of competition rather than collaboration, yeah? Like the Olympics, it's all about being the best, winning the game, getting the gold. And that fire, yeah, that occult magic has everyone focusing on the fire leading up to it. And, you know, it's a ritual. I speak about this in my latest book, The Grail. So, you know, those who embody those archetypes of the Olympiad, of Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades, this is the distorted masculine. These are not role models for he who wields the wand of light, like Luke Skywalker, you know, or the earlier gods of, you know, the Green Man, the Oak King, who, unlike the Olympiads who refused to die, yeah, because, you know, they were immortal, the Earth Father archetype is a man who will bow to the wisdom of the seasons and undergo an ego death every year. And if you want to know more about that, you can read my book, The Grail. But, you know, Zeus, for instance, he's a rationalist. He saw Earth from above. He's high and mighty. He's arrogant. He thinks he knows best. This might remind you of Trump. You know, what we need to look at is the mythos, the archetypes that are anchored within our earthly realm here on 3D. Because if we identify the story, we can change it. We can say we don't want this. It doesn't reflect our values and who we are as a species. So the more we bow to the cycles, the more we shift the paradigm and we shift the old story, which does not serve anybody. So I'm going to be doing a series of events this year online at each of the seasonal Stargates to midwife the collective around this year of intensity. And this together makes up the what's called the Wheel of Eight, or the Star of Ishtar. It even looks like the compass, yeah, the North Star, you know, the four equinoxes and solstices and the cross-quarter festivals. So if you're interested to know about the one I'll be doing for the March equinox, go over to themoonwoman.com and join my list, and as soon as I open registrations, you'll be the first to know. But in the meantime, the best thing we can be doing right now is embodying brotherhood and sisterhood, joining in circle, in alignment with the cycles of the sun and the moon. Okay, so for women, that's the 13 moons in the red tent or the moon lodge. For the brothers, that's journeying the 12 suns in alignment with the sun. And for the women, if you want to join me this Sunday, we start the red tent journey on International Women's Day with the Monarch ceremony you never got, the Welcome to Womanhood, which is a powerful threshold, even done retrospectively. For the guys, stay tuned. We will be journeying the 12 suns starting in late March when the sun moves into Aries, the first sign of the zodiac wheel. So, this is a time for us to remember our power by generating it in the vortex of circle, in alignment with the vortices of nature. So that's all for now. Thanks for listening. You have my blessing to share this. And yes, find your center. And if you feel yourself polarizing, just come back to your own center. Thanks so much. Ciao for now.